everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to day 9 of 13 days of Halloween. I'm Erin, and for today's video we are going to be talking about real life ghost ships. Now, we've all heard tall tales of ghost ships sailing the high seas, such as the Flying Dutchman, but did you know that there really has been real life cases of ghost ships, which are essentially abandoned ships, floating around in the ocean? And some of the stories about them and the mystery behind them is pretty darn creepy. Okay, so the first boat we're going to talk about is the SV Mary Celeste. And SV would stand for sailing vessel. So the last known entry for the Mary Celeste was on November 25th, 1872. And this was after the ship had sailed past Santa Maria Island. Now, at some point after this, the ship became derelict, which means it was essentially abandoned, and no one really knows the reason why. The Mary Celeste was found on December 4th, 1872, and it was found between Portugal and Azores. When the ship was found, there were no lifeboats on board. Now, initially they had thought that maybe there was some kind of damage or distress done to the ship. When the ship was found, though, it was found mostly intact, and it was heading toward the Strait of Gibraltar. When they were investigating the vessel, they found that most of the provisions were on board, so food, drink, what have you. And there were plenty of them left. What they also discovered, though, is that the entire crew was missing. Now, as I said, the lifeboats were gone, so obviously they had abandoned the ship for some reason, but nobody really knows why. They did try to search for the crew and see if it was nearby in the lifeboats, but the crew of the Mary Celeste was never found. So this next one is probably going to be the most modern one that I'm going to speak about, and it is about the sailing vessel Belle Amica. So the Belle Amica was a classic schooner that was found near Punta Volpe, Italy in 2006. The ship was discovered by the Coast Guard at the time. When the Coast Guard boarded the ship to investigate, they found half-eaten Egyptian meals, French maps of North Africa, and a flag from Luxembourg. Now, as you can see in the picture, this particular vessel was thought to be some type of antique ship that had been wandering around for a while and then just eventually ran aground. However, after they did some more investigating, they found out who the last owner of this particular ship was. And that's when they discovered that this was actually not an antique vessel, but it was actually a modern vessel, even though it looks pretty darn old. Turns out this one wasn't such a mystery. It appears that the owner had decided to abandon the ship, so he would no longer have to pay taxes on it. So the next one I'm going to talk about, which I'm probably going to butcher the name to be honest, is the SS Owl Ring Medan. Now, I found some kind of conflicting information about this one, but I'll kind of give you the gist of what I found altogether. So this ship was found 400 nautical miles southwest of the Marshall Islands in 1948 by an American vessel. Now, one site I read just said that this had been discovered by an American vessel. Another site I read said that a distress call had come from this particular ship from a crew member saying something to the effect of, "I die, we're all dead," something creepy like that. So obviously they figured the ship was in distress, and then they went on like an emergency search to see if they could find out what the heck was wrong with this boat. Now, there's where it differs. They kind of converged and merged together, the two stories from the two separate sites at this point, so we'll just go on from there. Now, apparently this particular vessel was supposed to be traveling from a small port in China down to Costa Rica. And apparently along the way it had been deliberately trying to avoid authorities. So the question became whether they were trying to deliberately avoid authorities because of what was found on board, which I will tell you in just a second, or because they were shipping some kind of illegal cargo and they didn't want to be caught. So when the American ship finally either stumbled upon this ship or went for their emergency search and they found it, what they found was that the entire ship was littered with dead bodies of the crew. There were a lot of dead people on board. Now, they went to go board the ship to investigate. However, This is when the ship essentially exploded with fire and began to sink. So they didn't really get to investigate too much, obviously, because the ship had caught on fire and then eventually sunk. Now, here again is where things differ. One site said that everybody that was on board perished, obviously because there were the dead bodies that were there, and anybody that was alive on the boat would have ended up going down with the boat. However, the other website that I was doing research on said that there was one lone survivor, and he said that the reason why everybody was dead on board was because it was carrying sulfuric acid, which was being improperly stored, and obviously due to it being improperly stored, that's what caused the crew to die. So that's definitely a bizarre one. Can you imagine coming upon a ship that has the entire crew dead on it? So this next one is fairly recent too, and this is about the High Aim 6. So the High Aim 6 was a Taiwanese ship that was found drifting in Australian waters. And it was found on January 9th, 2003. When the ship was discovered, the entire crew was missing. As they investigated the ship, they realized that there were no obvious signs of distress that would have gone on with the ship, and actually a lot of the crew's personal effects were still on board. Now, the mystery eventually became a little bit solved with this one as far as the crew missing. Eventually, Taiwanese police said that they had somebody in custody who was a crew member of the ship, and they believed that the ship was abandoned because the crew had kind of either revolted, or it's also called a mutiny when the crew goes against, like, the captain and what have you. So they said that it was something along those lines that had happened, and that's why the ship ended up being abandoned. The crew just left. I also read some snippets that said that the person that was arrested said that the crew had murdered the captain and the engineer that were running the ship. So again, kind of like a revolt or a mutiny against those two. But definitely creepy to stumble upon a ship that big with no crew and still have all their personal effects on it. Now, whether or not they ever found the rest of the crew or anything like that, I couldn't find any information on. So I don't know if the one guy was just unlucky enough to be found or what the situation was with that. So the next ship we're going to talk about is the Octavius. So the Octavius was found aimlessly drifting off the coast of Greenland by a whaling ship called the Herald. Now, when the members of the Herald boarded the Octavius to see what was going on, they found that the entire crew, or anybody who was aboard the ship, was actually dead and frozen. Now, they presumably had all died from freezing to death. Now, here's where this takes a little bit of a creepy twist, if you ask me. So, apparently, the ship's captain was found frozen to death, sitting at his desk, actually filling out his logbook. And the log entry he had been apparently filling out was from 1762. Why is this odd, you say? Well, the ship had been found in 1775, which means that this ship could have been floating around aimlessly for 13 years. And the bodies were still intact because they were frozen. So that is definitely very creepy and very bizarre. So this next one I'm going to talk about is not just one boat, but 12 boats that were found, and the title of these boats was simply known as the Korean People's Army. So as I said, this is about 12 wooden boats that were found, and they were found off the coast of Japan. Now, the state that the boats were in when they found them made people seem to think that they had been out in the water for quite a while. Now, on board these 12 vessels were 22 dead bodies. So it wasn't like it was 22 bodies in one boat. They were found spread throughout these 12 boats. Now, what was strange was that some of the bodies were decapitated, while one other boat was found with 6 skulls in it. Now, initially, when they had found these boats, they had no idea where they were from. The only hints that they had was that one boat said the Korean People's Army on it, and then there was another vessel that contained what seemed to be like a torn off piece of a North Korean flag. Now, obviously, communication with North Korea, not so great with any country, really. So it's still a mystery as to where the heck these boats came from and why they were there. You could probably point to the North Korean army being unhappy with these people and just kind of pushing them off to sea after they had been executed or what have you. But who knows? Anything could have happened. Maybe they turned on each other. Who knows? Definitely weird. Okay, so the last ship we're going to talk about is part of the Graveyard of the Atlantic, which is near where I am. I had mentioned this in my first video for the 13 Days of Halloween of the Gray Man of Hatteras. The coast of North Carolina is known as the Graveyard of the Atlantic, and for good reason. There are hundreds and hundreds of shipwrecks that are up and down along the coast. So this last one we're going to talk about is the Carroll A. Deering. Now this ship ran aground in Diamond Shoals right near Cape Hatteras in 1921. They had noticed the ship, but it was stuck for days before the Coast Guard could actually get to it since it had run aground. Now once the Coast Guard had arrived, they realized that there was no damage to the ship. However, the equipment, the logbook, 2 lifeboats, and the entire crew were missing off of this ship. Now, my understanding is that investigations kind of revealed that there were actually a few other ships that also disappeared under mysterious circumstances around this time. And the reasoning behind this has been everything from pirates boarded the ship to it being some kind of paranormal thing. Obviously a storm. They felt like they had to abandon ship for some reason. That's another reason why they could have left. And then the last one, which I thought was pretty darn interesting, was maybe this had something to do with the Bermuda Triangle, since it's right there in that area. What do you guys think? Now this is just a snippet of some ghost ships that I found that were real life ghost ships. These were the ones that I thought were most interesting or creepy to me. There is one more that I think I might do an entire video just on that particular ghost ship itself. I haven't completely decided yet. Essentially, a mummified man was found on this boat, and there's some mysterious circumstances around that one as well. But that is it for this video, guys. If you liked it, please give me a big old thumbs up. If you haven't yet subscribed, hit that subscribe button down below, and I will catch you guys in my next video, which is tomorrow. Alright guys, bye!